Biddy Baxter is forever associated with one of the greatest institutions of British television. For more than 25 years, she was in charge of Blue Peter, a programme which redefined the genre of children's broadcasting and continues to delight successive generations of youngsters to this very day. Biddy was born Joan Maureen Baxter in Leicester. She spent a happy childhood during the war years, showing early talent for making a media splash by raffling one of her dolls to raise funds for the war effort. She admits now, however, that the loss of the doll was no great sacrifice, as she was a teddy bear person, really. Her education was conducted entirely at the Wyggeston Grammar School for Girls, just across the road from this hall, and she has fond memories of brilliant but often eccentric teachers who favoured intellectual development over mere tuition. Biddy was no good with numbers, but words were a different matter, and she talked her way into St Mary's College, Durham, by impressing a particularly crusty professor at interview. Biddy loved her Durham years, but was frustrated when the aspirations of the university careers officer for a woman graduate did not extend beyond teaching or secretarial work. Fortunately, the visit to the careers service was not wasted. She saw a poster for jobs at the BBC on her way in. She was confirmed in her determination to apply by the career advisor's haughty assertion that no one from Durham has ever joined the BBC. She started work as a trainee studio manager in radio, responsible, not always successfully, for ensuring that the right sounds emerged in the right order and at the right time from the studio control room. This proved too technical for her, and she applied successfully for a producer's post in BBC Radio's schools department, where she worked on the famous Listen with Mother. Realising that TV was the way to go for children's broadcasting, she won an attachment to BBC Children's TV and was immediately thrown in the deep end, producing short programmes for the under-5s. At the end of the attachment, she applied for a permanent position in TV, fully aware that there were many well-qualified people ahead of her in the queue. They didn't get the job, however, and Biddy was astounded to be told that she was to produce Blue Peter. She describes her initial reaction as sheer terror, but good sense and generous support from colleagues prevailed, and her life was changed forever. Blue Peter was not new, but was struggling to make an impact. Biddy was fortunate to gather round her Edward Barnes and Rosemary Gill, and thus was born one of the strongest production teams in the history of BBC TV. Biddy was certain that the key to success was audience involvement, not easy in a one-way medium like TV. With her team, she developed what today would be called branding, including the now famous galleon symbol designed by Tony Hart. This appeared on the studio set, the programme's writing paper, and most significantly, the Blue Peter badge, awarded to viewers for contributions sent in to the programme. This could work only if many letters could be processed and catalogued. With a weekly programme budget of just £180, more resources had to be found for this, and Biddy showed her true mettle by fighting her case right to the top of the organisation. Very soon, viewers were contributing ideas for 80% of the programme's content, and the involvement with the audience drew the children of the nation into an immutable connection with the programme. There are few UK folk in their 50s now who do not remember Petra the dog, a TV pet for children increasingly living where contact with animals was limited. Later generations have related to a veritable menagerie of successors. The phrase, "Here's one I made earlier," has entered the lexicon of UK life to characterise the construction of fantastic models with plastic bottles, toilet roll centres, and the ubiquitous sticky-backed plastic. Goodness knows how many versions of Tracy Island were made on kitchen tables across the UK. Each year, children were drawn into Blue Peter appeals, designed so that children from all backgrounds could contribute by sending in silver paper and other bric-a-brac. So many good causes across the world have benefited hugely from this annual outpouring of generosity. being a Blue Peter presenter became a ticket to celebrity, and many famous faces on British TV today started out their careers under the watchful eye and occasionally assertive guidance of Biddy in her control gallery. Biddy left Blue Peter after 26 years and went on to become a consultant to 2 BBC Directors General. She was married to John Hosier, principal of the Guildhall School of Music and Drama and the Hong Kong Academy for Performing Arts. And since he sadly died, she has devoted herself to a charity in his name that enables outstandingly talented but impecunious musical graduates to progress to postgraduate studies. Her brilliance was recognised by the award of Fellowship of the Royal Television Society in 1996, following MBE in 1981, and perhaps most fittingly, a gold Blue Peter badge in 1988. Blue Peter is known to virtually everyone in the UK. Millions of children, and even more of us who have now become adults, are eternally grateful to Biddy and her team for providing enjoyment and entertainment to successive generations over nearly 5 decades. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, on the recommendation of Senate and Council, I present to you Biddy Baxter, that you may confer upon her the Honorary Degree of Doctor of Laws.
I admit you to the honorary degree of Doctor of Laws. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Another one. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, Professor Peterson, distinguished guests and fellow graduates, it's difficult to describe the surprise and delight I felt, both in equal measure, when I opened the Vice-Chancellor's letter offering this honorary degree of Doctor of Laws, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It was our viewers who made Blue Peter well and truly their programme, not only by contributing their ideas, but for all those billions of tons of rubbish they collected for our annual appeals. In 1968, they collected old wool and cotton that we sold to help children who were the victims of the Nigerian Biafran Civil War. We showed film of children and babies in advanced stages of kwashiorkor with obscenely distended stomachs, skeletal arms and legs, and hollow eyes. And a mother wrote to say, "My little boy is 4.5. He's been to the neighbours and collected 5 socks and 3 pillowcases, and we've just been to the post office to send the parcel. He's now firmly convinced that all the babies are better. There is no more famine. I'm sure you will agree that he's a little young to be disillusioned, but I want to thank you for showing my son, who has a roof over his head, enough to eat, and a loving home, that some children and babies are not so fortunate." And it was through letters like this that we began to realise the extraordinary rapport Blue Peter was establishing with children. A woman employed as a companion to a 7-year-old girl wrote to say they were regular Blue Peter viewers. The child had suffered a traumatic experience when she was 3 that had resulted her becoming a voluntary mute, incapable of speech. On a recent programme, we'd filmed a baby seal at Chessington Zoo and announced a competition to name it. At the end of the programme, the child had turned to the companion and said, "Her name is Brenda." These were the first words she'd spoken for 4 years. We never pretended to be perfect and always acknowledged our mistakes, so long as the criticisms were fair, but I've never forgotten the shock I felt many years ago now when I was attacked by a headmistress. I had agreed to attend a school prize day. Unfortunately, the The school was miles out of London and it was a programme day, so I couldn't leave Television Centre until 5:30 in the thick of the rush hour. My driver went hell for leather, reached the school just in time. I ran up the steps into an entrance hall, and at the far end of the corridor, advancing toward me, one arm outstretched, was the headmistress. She was wearing a hat, and I wasn't, and she was carrying something heavy in her other arm. As she drew closer, she dropped her extended arm and bellowed, "But you're not Valerie Singleton!" Followed by, "Here are some complaints from the children," as she thrust a pile of letters into my arms. But far more typical was this letter from Wendy, age 10. "Dear Blue Peter, I couldn't believe my ears this morning. My mum said, 'Come downstairs, Wendy, there's a letter for you.' I couldn't believe it had come from Blue Peter and I had won a badge. I took my letter to school to show to my teacher, Mr. Herbert. He said, 'Oh, not now, Wendy.' But when he saw it was from the BBC, he said, 'Oh, all right.' He read it once, he read it twice, and then he read it again. And then he said, 'My goodness,' and took it to the headmistress, Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith read my letter out to the whole of the school at assembly. She said it was the first time anyone from the school had had a letter from the BBC. I'll never forget the day I won my badge. And I, Mr. Vice-Chancellor, will never forget today.